Even so, though, it's crazy to think of the injustice done to these families.
I agree. Just being sent to a place nicknamed Hell Valley based on your ethnicity just makes me sick.
Hey everyone, my name is Diego Pensalo.
And my name is Q Miller. And today, DQ Podcast presents Hawaii, the not so perfect paradise.
We'll be talking about the internment camps in Hawaii.
Over the past few months, it has been brought to our attention that during World War II, the United States interned its citizens based on their nationality.
While the Japanese American citizens were recognized, our German American brethren and sisters have yet to be.
Our mission today is to finally shed some light on the dark part of American history.
Q and I will be talking about the German American internment camps in Hawaii. I'll be talking about the Sand Island internment camp, and Q will be talking about the Honolulu internment camp.
Let's just start with the basics. Where was Sand Island located?
Well, Sand Island is located on the coast of Honolulu. It is a small resort island that is pretty beautiful to visit these day and ages.
So, when was this camp opened?
This camp opened in December of 1941 and held internees until March of 1943.
So this camp opened right after the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
Yes.
So how many people were held in this camp?
I believe two facilities were holding about 250 Japanese males, and the other facility held about 40 females, varying of different ethnicities and races. And 25 of those people were of German and Italian heritage.
So that's roughly a class-sized group of German Americans that were held there?
Yes, that's one way to put it.
Do you know what the internees had to go through during their time under guard?
Well, for starters, the barracks had yet to be built. For this first 6 months, they lived in tents, and the internees were also in constant motion because the camps were too small to house them all.
So they didn't have homes. Were they shipped to the mainland if they went over capacity?
Yes, they were.
All right. So I know Hawaii has great weather, but imagine being forced to live outside for 6 months. Were they able to do their own thing while being held there at least?
But for Sand Island, the camp, they were able to do their own things, but it was, of course, through restriction. They were being held through fences, through barbed wires.
Mm-hmm.
However, they were given very few ranges of freedom with who they were able to interact with in the weekends.
Okay.
But Sand Island isn't the only camp in Hawaii, I believe. I believe in Honolulu, there is another camp. You looked into Camp Honolulu, right?
Right, you are. One internment camp wasn't enough to hold the people uprooted from their homes in Hawaii. Can you believe that?
It's truly sickening. When was this camp established?
Camp Honolulu was established in 1943, only about a half hour away from Sand Island. This was because of martial law due to the bombing of Pearl Harbor, but this one was established later because it was serving a different purpose. This was actually largely a prisoner of war camp.
Prisoners? Wait, so I'm mainly assuming that men were held there?
That's right. Less than 10% of the people held at the camp were internees, actually. However, of that 10%, there were women and children, parts of families. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find any camp records to support specific statistics on that.
So you're saying that they were prisoners and they were ordinary internees, such as men, women, and children.
Mm-hmm.
Were the citizens held together with the prisoners?
Luckily, they were kept separate. Fortunately, it was for all the wrong reasons. The United States did not care about the safety of the internees. However, they were really concerned about their own safety, and they didn't want the internees to have any connection with the prisoners of war so that no information could be relayed.
So that's basically, they're worried about espionage?
Yep, that's exactly what they were worried about. That's the reason why the internees were rounded up in the first place.
So they're worried about espionage instead of the safety of their own citizens?
Unfortunately, yes.
Do you know when everyone was allowed to leave the camp?
The camp was closed in 1946. However, this was largely due to the release of prisoners of war, not internees. So they filtered out in 1945 on probation as soon as they were actually allowed to leave.
Wait, so they released the prisoners before they released the internees?
No, so the internees were released first, and then the camp was officially closed in 1946 because of how long it took for the official prisoner exchange and release bureaucracy stuff.
Even so, though, it's crazy to think of the injustice done to these families.
I agree. Just being sent to a place nicknamed Hell Valley based on your ethnicity just makes me sick.
So now we have some background on these camps. I think it would be fitting to focus on the stories of these families that were held or split up by these facilities.
We wanted to focus on the impact of internment on the Berg family through the eyes of Doris Berg. Their family was held in both Sand Island and Camp Honolulu.
The Bergs were interned in Sand Island. Doris's father, Frederick Berg, and her grandparents immigrated from Germany. Doris's parents were interned on December 8th of 1941, and Doris's older sister, Elle, was taken 5 days later.
This left Doris at age 11 and her younger sister at the age of 9 abandoned. Doris wrote in her memoir, "All three of my family, mother, father, and older sister, had literally vanished. We knew that they were dead, murdered."
Interesting enough, the family was rounded up by the FBI before the war was officially declared on Germany.
Not only is that blatantly illegal, but they were just rounding up proud Americans. On the same day that Pearl Harbor was attacked, Doris and her sister were watching a dogfight. She recalled, right above us, there was a group of Japanese Zeros and 2 American planes in dogfights. One of the Japanese planes was shot down, and my sister and I jumped around shouting, "Hooray for our side." They were old enough and proud enough of their country to recognize that their side was winning. And I feel like this just turned into a witch hunt because our country didn't seem to recognize that they were our citizens.
It's honestly quite sad. I agree. And the fact that they were such a proud family of their nation, they were proud to be Americans. They felt that they were protected because they were Americans. But it's quite sad, especially since there were German Americans in the military overseeing their internment. I also find it fascinating that many German Americans were interrogated because of many anonymous tips that they were saying that they were Nazi spies and refused to hear their side of the story.
Not only that, but Germans were reporting other Germans to curb suspicion, and they were paid to do it. They were paid informants.
It's obscene to think that the Bergs were subjected to horrible living conditions because someone else wanted to save their skin and line their pockets with money.
The Bergs were separated, which made their already negligible communication while being interned impossible, as well as being harassed by their countrymen while being interned.
Fortunately though, they didn't have to spend that long. After 6 months, the family was able to reunite with visitation on the weekends in April 1942, before being transferred to Camp Honolulu in February of 1943.
The family then had to tough it out until August of 1943 when Frederick, the father, and the last member of the family to be released came home on probation.
However, even though they were on parole, they were released and they still had to struggle through their own hardships. They weren't free yet. They had to struggle through their own hardships, their own financial hardships, their own legal troubles, because they had to bring over the property over to a man that they consider their friend, an attorney called Mr. Reed. However, he took advantage of their internment and just pocketed their money, pocketed their land, sold it, and they struggled making a living again once they came back. And not only that, they had psychological torments left on them for decades.
The injustice left them emotionally and financially scarred. It was too painful for Doris to talk about. When she finally went public in 1985, she was overwhelmed by emotion and grief. This is nearly 40 years after this happened.
Wow. No, and to think that to this day, the German Americans have yet to be recognized and further suffering, just like the Japanese Americans received in 1988.
Well, we just want to say thank you for giving us your time and attention. Thank you for tuning into DQ Podcasts.
And hopefully you can help by writing to your local congressman and asking them for their support on a bill to officially recognize the German American internees as they rightfully deserve.
A special thanks to Doris, Berg, and I for sharing her story and giving us inspiration for this podcast.
If you like a copy of our script or to view our sources, please click the links in the description below.
If you haven't already, smash that like button and subscribe for more content.
Thank you so much and have a great day.
Bye.